I just have a couple questions for you. How many people here are from the Bronx? Awesome. That's wonderful. And how many people have been to the Bronx Museum before? Excellent. What a good. Thank you. Keep coming back. Just so you all know, we are free admission all the time. We have late hours during the summer, so Friday nights are open until 11 p.m. Please bring your friends and family after work. All of our programs are free. That's something that we take great joy in. Also, the bar is subject to donation. Please have a drink. I went to a couple of house things. One restroom here. There are more restrooms downstairs. Also, hey Lynn, our intern. Hi, Lynn. Hi. Is going to be taking surveys. If you'll please fill out a survey at the back. At the end of the night, we'll pick one out as a raffle, and you'll win a museum tote bag, a museum mug, and a free group visit tour, which means you and 10 or 25 of your closest friends can come here for a free tour of the museum with a tour guide. So, with all that said, I am so pleased to welcome Nina Talbot to the stage.
I want to thank the Bronx Museum for hosting the exhibit, the Veterans exhibit in the community gallery. Sergio Bessa, Leah Zala, and of course Lauren Click. I want to thank all the veterans who shared their stories with me to enable me to do the portraits. We're going to do a presentation that Sophie ran, my collaborator, and Sophie actually wrote all the stories that accompany the paintings. She's going to do the presentation that she's worked very hard on. And then we're fortunate to have special guest veteran speaker Joe Bello. And then after that we're going to have our guest veterans with questions and dialogue, and that will be followed by a Q&A. And now I'm going to hand it over to Joe Bello, if you want to say a few words, and then Sophie will do her presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Nina. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for everybody for coming. I will make my remarks really brief. It's an honor to be here. I've had the privilege of seeing the exhibit a couple of times. I've seen it at the VA regional office, and I've seen it here, and they're wonderful. I find the paintings to be very unique. I think they tell a great story in terms of the veterans themselves, what they've gone through, who they were, who they are, and even to some extent where they're going. And so in that regard, I think it's phenomenal. I'm really proud to know some of you, Archie, definitely. I say it is, yeah. So, I just want to say that, art and the arts are very important. It seems to be a growing piece in the veteran space, particularly for veterans who are returning home. It is one way for us to share and tell our story, to share with the civilian population our experiences, things that we've seen, things that we've done. In some cases, in most cases, it helps us as well to deal with some of the transitional issues that we have, or issues such as post-traumatic, or when you're coming back home. It's difficult when you're in a structured environment to come home to a city of 8.4 million people with only 250,000 veterans in the 5 boroughs. And one day you have a structured lifestyle, the next day nobody's really paying attention to what you're doing. And at the same time, you're trying to get the services that you need to get done, and you're trying to get your life back together from when you left. So again, art plays a very important piece in terms of sharing everything that is about us, and it helps bridge the civilian veteran dialogue. So I hope to see more events like this as time goes by, and I do hope that we enjoy the presentation and you all get a chance and bring others to see the exhibit as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Good evening, everybody. also available here tonight. Excerpts of them are available on cards, and Nina can sign those for you. The series captures the experiences and lives of veterans. We call the work a visual oral history, as it encapsulates the living memory of people whose stories might otherwise go untold. Veterans are in our midst, and taking the role of historian, Nina mined personal stories against the backdrop of history. She is a civilian, but she became engrossed in learning about veterans through her love of history and her interest in the human experience. Ultimately, the series is about bridging the gap between civilians and the military. The portraits that you see in the gallery hint at the extensive background research that went into them, including interviews, historical research, and the gathering of photographs from the veterans themselves. The paintings are accompanied by stories, as I said, and I've loved your work with Nina in this small way. Today I want to share with you some of the primary resources that were used to create the portraits, and to discuss with the veterans who we have here today some of the themes that came across through their experience. First, let me just give a brief introduction of the veterans who are here with us today. We have Leroy Archibald, who Archibald was a U.S. Marine tanker in the Korean War. Joseph G. Needy, sitting over there. He was a U.S. Marine platoon leader in Vietnam. Maria Carrion in the back, a U.S. Marine. A sergeant in the Army, in the U.S. Army. Carmen Rodriguez. We're going to start with the elder of the group, Reverend James Blakely. Reverend Blakely is a Navy veteran who served during World War II. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Well, my name is James Edward Blakely. I was born January 8, 1920 in the state of Arkansas. That was a very good year.
Reverend Blakely was at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, when it was attacked. We see this in the upper right-hand corner. Again, I'll let him describe the experience.
I had the honor of speaking with Reverend Blakely about his experiences during World War II at Pearl Harbor, Iwo Jima.
I began in December 1941, about 5 or 6 minutes before 8 o'clock. The word out on the USS St. Louis, that's a light, what they call box back, light cruiser. The word came over the loudspeaker. All hands man the battle station, all hands man the battle station. This is not a drill. That was where hell on earth began.
Reverend Blakely also served in Hawaii, at Guadalcanal, and at Iwo Jima. Other elements of the paintings include, on the right-hand panel, a scene with flamethrowers, which were weapons that actually shot flame at their targets, that Reverend Blakely remembers. And on the upper left-hand corner, the raising of the flag at Iwo Jima, which Reverend Blakely witnessed. He spoke with Nina about the losses that they experienced, and he told her about the burial at sea. You see some elements of this in the lower right-hand corner. You see American flags draping the coffins that contain the many sailors that they buried at sea. And being a reverend, he quoted from scripture, "The sea shall bury their dead," which, if you look closely, you can see is written in the lower right-hand corner. In the upper right-hand corner is a memorial stone of Black Veterans for Social Justice, which is an organization in Brooklyn that helped Reverend Blakely find housing. At the time that Nina interviewed him, he was actually homeless. Reverend Blakely was a guest speaker at Copperton National Cemetery, and we wanted to share with you his recollection of that experience.
Certain places you go out there and you look as far as eyes can hold, you don't see nothing but white tombstones. They're not flower path pots. Some person gave his life, some son, daughter, whatever. And I began to think about Alice and that children. And also I wonder, what can I do to make this world a better place? One answer will come back to me. Start with yourself. And that's what I try to do.
We go from World War II to Korea with Mr. Leroy Archibald. A Marine veteran who many of you may know as Archie. Mr. Archibald was a tanker in the Korean War, and his specialty is depicted in the upper left-hand corner. He is a decorated veteran. His medals are seen in the lower left. He received the Korean United Nations Medal, the National Defense Service Medal, a Korea Service Medal with 4 Bronze Stars, a Good Conduct Medal, and that's just to name a few. After returning home in 1960, Mr. Archibald went on to have an extraordinary career in community service. He was an advisor for the Mayor's Office of Veterans Affairs under Mayor A. Bean, and he was appointed by Governor Cuomo to serve on the statewide Veterans Affairs Commission. On the right-hand side, you see football players. Mr. Archibald organized and coached a youth football team, the Cortland Colts, in the Bronx. The team continues to this day and is coached by one of Mr. Archibald's former youth players.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Mr. Archibald acted in veterans like National Association
There's a star right behind
and
you.
Black Veterans for Social Justice. You see the icons for those organizations on the left.
Nina's husband? Benita.
He organized and raised money for a campaign to restore the Charlton Thompson Memorial Garden. Charlton and Thompson, who you see in the upper right-hand corner, were 2 African-American Korean War heroes who were denied the burial at Arlington that they were entitled to. Mr. Archibald was also responsible for having the remains of the body of Benedict Charlton reinterred at Arlington National Cemetery. Here's an image of the garden on the day that Nina interviewed Mr. Archibald. To the right of the figure is an image of Mr. Archibald marching at an Fest event. And in the top left are some elements from his childhood. The house that he grew up in before he settled in Harlem, and a horse. He spent some of his teenage years in Kentucky and recalls sneaking off to the Kentucky Derby to exercise horses. Maria Carrion is a Marine whose status as a woman impacted her military experience. From the time she enlisted, she stood out for being a woman. She talked about what it was like going to the recruiting office at Fort Hamilton.
And I went to take that test. The paper test, yes, looking real so many times, and so many females in my lives, but when I realized we didn't have females, so I didn't need. So then the recruiters, the donors, sergeants that were there, They have like 200 coolers and 400 rolling now. Well, they told me pass to tell you that I passed the test. Again, we cool earlier. We're thinking I will not pass the test. Imagine because we have one. Excuse me, they advised me, they said, Maria, they said, why don't you choose to apply for Marines is too powerful. Marines are too hard. You're very fair. You're a little girl. You may not be a warrior. I mean, I said, you really didn't think I would pass this test. We said it, but we didn't believe it. I told them, you know what? I'll be back in 2 months as a Marine. I'm going to the Marines. I don't want to go with us.
She continued on through her training. She continued to experience the fact that she was definitely standing out for being a woman in the military.
And then decided to find a weekend, you know. That was another story. That's where I wanted to go, what would I call it? Defense against men? I don't know. That's where I realized the problem that I would have to the military would be in men.
Maria shared an image with us of her with some of her fellow Marines, and that's incorporated into being on the right-hand side. Next, we have Sandra Rolon. Inside the figure of Miss Rolon is a smaller figure of her when she was in the service. She served in 1991 in the Haitian relief effort after the president of Haiti was ousted in the military coup. In the painting, we see her working with kids for that mission called Operation Gimbo. In the top left corner, we see Camp Buka in Iraq, where Sandra later served as a senior food operations sergeant, making sure that food and supplies were stocked and distributed. Camp Buka was a detention facility that her unit closed. She also worked escorting vehicles along local roads in Iraq and Kuwait en route to pick up supplies. Then in the bottom right, we see Sandra in uniform getting ready to board a plane for some much-needed R&R. Nina showed her training at Fort Dix, where she had to jump in and out of windows, crawl on the ground, and do push-ups as part of her training. Before she even got into training, she ran along the Bruckner Expressway trying to build muscle mass as she was underweight, and we see her running along the highway on her right. She retired from the military in 2012. Sandra worked with Carmen Rosa Rodriguez, an Army veteran who started Military Women in Power, a group that has thrived as a resource for both women and men veterans. We see the logo for that group on the top right. Carmen was born in the Dominican Republic and came here as a young girl. Her father was in the Army in the DR, and before she graduated from high school, he told her, either go to school or get married or do something. And she said, I'm going to the Army. So she joined the Army and went to basic training at Fort Jackson, which we see on the left side. Carmen was a recruiter here in New York. We see some scenes from her job as a recruiter on the right side. She worked in the Bronx on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. The lower left-hand corner is the ribbon for MST, military sexual trauma, which is one of the many issues that Sandra and Carmen deal with in their work. Next is Dorothy Davis, who is here with us tonight as well. The painting features a mini portrait of Dorothy while she was in the Army within the larger figure. She was deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Desert Storm and Operation Desert Shield during the invasion of Kuwait. She was a medic and worked in a field hospital there. In the top right is an image of that hospital. In the top left is an image of Dorsidius loading up on a medic helicopter. And right below it to the right, it's small, but we see an image of medics standing over a dead soldier. Another medic scene is on the right-hand side, medics working over a wounded soldier. After transitioning back to New York, she struggled as a female veteran with very little benefits in healthcare. It inspired Ms. Davis to become an advocate for all veterans, but specifically targeting the women's veterans population. She's the Vice President of the Veteran Action Group and Chairwoman for the Veterans Action Group Committee, the Women's Veterans Action Group Committee, working with women veterans and their families. This picture is just an example of some of the groups that she works with. Next is Joanne Session, one of the women veterans who has participated in the Military Women Power Group. Ms. Session has a big family and enjoys spending time with her children and grandchildren. Some of them are involved in painting. Above that is an image that refers to Joanne's training as a heavy wheel mechanic in the Army. She also worked in food service at Fort Tom in Queens. You see the entrance to Fort Tom on the right. After her service, she worked for many years for the MTA. We see that in the bottom right. And Joanne is an artist in her own right, and she gave me the permission to feature some of the artwork in the painting. For example, on the upper left, this is the original, and the upper right, another work by Joanne. Eugene Jarvis is an Army veteran who served in Vietnam. Another form of activism is through one's beliefs that are formed by virtue of their experience in the aftermath. This individual activism became a really strong part of Eugene's identity, which he talked about.
I'm not an activist. I'm a quiet activist myself.
Eugene had many photographs from his time in Vietnam, which he shared with us. The pictures depict the brotherhood that he shared with his fellow soldiers. Nina incorporated those images into the painting, as well as some images from his childhood. I'll just point out one in the upper left. Eugene got a job doing a paper route when he was a young boy, and was very self-sufficient since he was a young man, and attributed that to some of his resilience while he was in Vietnam. He also spoke about his friendship with a fellow soldier named Ken Simon, who died in a car crash when he came home. And a picture of that is on the right-hand side. He talked about the difficulty of coming home.
You don't realize until you come home the effect that has. Now you're down to earth. You're back in the world where this is not going to happen. But then you're thinking about your friends that are still there. And at this point, during that period of time, you're going to go back. It sounds crazy, but what I didn't do it. I should go back. I still have guys there that hopefully they make it. But some didn't.
He talked a bit more about this theme of the guilt of coming home.
Time is essence of life. And I made it out of the States, so that's the biggest. That's the biggest minus of being uncut. Why I came home. I don't understand.
Next we have Doug Webb, a Marine who was deployed 3 times to Iraq and Afghanistan. He's the youngest of the group. In the top right is a scene from the first day of bombing during the Battle of Fallujah in Iraq. Doug sent us some pictures of his time in Afghanistan. The one that's painted on the left panel is of him with a buddy who didn't make it, and the soldiers made a memorial to him, which you see in the lower left-hand corner. On the right side are poppy fields in Afghanistan that produced opium and heroin. Doug wrote to us, Nina got to know him mostly through email correspondence, about how it affected him seeing farmers harvesting poppy fields since some of his family members struggled with substance abuse. There's poppy flowers throughout the painting. You can see some of them on the left side. Here's a picture of Doug in Nina's studio. This was the first time that they met. This was also the first time that Doug saw his portrait. He had come home for the funeral of his mother, whose gravestone is in the lower right-hand corner. Doug said that his motivation for enlisting in the Marines was that he was looking for a family. He said, "I did not have a solid family foundation with the exception of my grandmother, which led me to seek an alternative family." And we see him and his grandmother in the upper left-hand corner. We met Doug through Joseph Giannini, who you can see standing behind him in this picture. This was at a portrait exhibit of Brooklyn Vietnam veterans that included Joe at the Brooklyn Historical Society, and Joe is with us tonight. Joe is also a Marine, a Vietnam veteran, who was a mentor to Doug, still is. He shared with us some of the artifacts from his service, which you can see in the lower left-hand corner. Then there's a picture of Joe on an amphibious ship writing a letter home. Joe helped coordinate a memorial that was also a protest of the current wars. The memorial consisted of crosses, stars, and crescents that we see in the lower right-hand corner. This was an image of it in the newspaper. Joe is an accomplished creative writer, and in the left-hand panel are titles of some of his short stories. His collection of short stories called Soft Targets will be published this summer by Post-Traumatic Press. Next is Felicia Parker. The experiences of Felicia Parker demonstrate a truly diverse and versatile military career. Inside the figure is a portrait of her when she first joined the Navy. She started out as an electrical engineer servicing submarines. She was deployed during Desert Storm and described the experience of being out on a ship during that time.
I was on a ship, so in the middle of the ocean. So the only thing that I can say is what they look like, just looking out to just pure darkness and nothing, but hearing missiles and bombs over your head all day long.
After spending 8 years in the Navy, Felicia joined civilian life, and then 12 years later she joined the Army at the age of 38. She had some ups and downs during that time, becoming homeless at one point. She lived in her car, and we see that on the right side of the painting. She talked about that experience of being homeless while she was in the Army.
And it was this sergeant major, command sergeant major in the United States Army that saw me because I was in the military, and she would see that all the stuff that I had in my car, I had a car, everything, all the stuff that I had in my car. And one day she saw me, she says, "Parker, what is going on?" She said, "It looks like you're living out the back of your car." And I looked, I said, "I am." That's how I said, "I am." She said, "What?" And literally, I would go to McDonald's or Russia, I would put that uniform on faithfully. I was in the military. I would put that uniform on and go to drill like nothing. And then I would get off of duty and get right back in my car.
In her Army career, she's a chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons specialist. She's currently deployed in Kuwait, training others in that specialty. You see the specialty on the left side of the painting. Felicia describes the stability that she has found after her long military career, or during, I should say, since she's still there.
Now I have my core, or I found a place, this is where I want to be, because I find it therapeutic to sit and speak with veterans, to tell them what I have been through, or tell them the experiences that I had.
And that comes about when you were doing in terms of funding jobs or housing.
How they get everybody is that, and just talking to them, let them know that, listen, I went from the pit to the pillow, within a matter of months. I went from house to car.
Resilience is a quality that we see through Fitzroy Newsom, who was a Tuskegee Airman. Fitzroy came to the U.S. as a child from Trinidad, and he knew he wanted to be a flyer from a very young age.
Yeah, I went.
What did you want to be? Do you remember?
Yeah, strictly a flyer.
You're good. From when you were 12.
When I was 10, I saw my first airplane. I went.
The top left shows Fitzroy seeing an airplane for the first time in Trinidad and not knowing, as he says, what the devil that thing was, but knowing that it was for him. But because the Air Force was segregated at the time that he applied, he was rejected, despite having educated himself from a very young age on aviation. He joined the National Guard instead and served as a commissioned officer, ultimately joining the Tuskegee Airmen toward the end of World War II. He spoke about what it was like finding out that he was going to be at Tuskegee, which was in the South.
Down to went down to Tuskegee.
Were you disappointed to hear it was in the South?
Yeah. And for good reason. I realized how poorly blacks were treated in the South. They weren't treated any better elsewhere, except that they weren't reading and Lincoln and you couldn't go where you wanted to go. I went.
Fitzroy shared some images of, actually his son Eric shared these images with us of his time while he was at Tuskegee. Here's one where we think he looks like a movie star. And another who's actually in the plane here. This is him with his wife and his family. Years later, he became a flight instructor for the Air Force, the very branch that had rejected him earlier in his career. This is a picture of him as an instructor. He received a Congressional Gold Medal from President Bush in 2007, and he was honored at the inauguration of President Obama along with other Tuskegee Airmen. So we end here with this historic veteran who passed away on January 2013. He would have been the oldest of the group. And I just want to mention that Reverend Blakely walked in just when we passed your slide.
Yeah.
I'm going to play his slide again once more just so we can see it. So, Mr. Blakely, we started by talking about you. We showed your portrait. And I let everyone hear how you introduce yourself.
Well, I said my name is James Edward Blakely. I was born January 1920 in the state of Arkansas. That was a very good year.
It certainly was. I was telling the audience how you were at Pearl Harbor on December the 7th, 1941, which Nina showed at the top of the painting. And again, you say it better than I could.
I had the honor of speaking with Reverend Blakely about his experiences during World War II at Pearl Harbor, Iwo Jima.
I was in December 1941.
At Iwo Jima, you saw flamethrowers, which Nina painted in the right-hand side of the painting, and on the top left, the raising of the flag, which you witnessed. Then in the lower right-hand corner, Nina incorporated the burial at sea, which you explained to her when you quoted scripture saying that the sea shall bury their dead, and you see the coffins covered with the American flag that were buried at sea. You see the headstone, or excuse me, not the headstone, the stone for Black veterans for social justice, which you stood in front of with Nina. And we also played a clip where you were talking about being a guest speaker at Calverton National Cemetery.
Certain places you go out there and you look as far as eyes can go, you don't see nothing but white tombstone. They're not far back, but some person gave his life, some son, daughter, whatever. And I began to think about their offspring and their children. And also I wonder, what can I do to make this world a better place? Well, the answer will come back to me. Start with yourself. And that's what I'm trying to do.
So, can I have the veterans up to the table here, and of course Nina and Joe, if you would join us also, please. We're going to be questions.
Let's hear it for Sophie.
Alright, so I'm gonna hush pretty soon, but I just wanted to start us off with a question to Nina, which was, what was your motivation for painting the series? And let me see if I can pass this down.
Or I can try to project. Can you guys hear me? My motivation, I have to say that I started by, I've been working on what I call history paintings for the last 15 years. I've worked in series. So the veteran series actually segued out of another series called Neighborhood Folks, which I was trying to represent. Is that?
Yes.
I was trying to represent members of the community, and I realized at one point that I didn't have a veteran. And I sort of said I'm a civilian, and I realized this is what would be more important than showing the veterans' stories. And so a friend of mine introduced me to an army veteran who lived in the storm. I sat with him, who was a manager in a barbershop in Brooklyn. And after a 2-hour interview, I realized this is going to be a whole series. It's not just going to be a part of this other series. And soon after that, I met Fitzroy Newsom, Tuskegee airman, because lo and behold, his son lived right around the corner from me. And I was in a restaurant with my family in the neighborhood, and we were waiting for our table, and Eric Newsom, his son, was sitting there with his family. And while we were waiting for the table, my husband while I kept him company waiting. And he was so excited, he brought out all these materials, he brought out his medal, he brought out a book that he was included in the grant center with elementary school airmen had written in his community. Actually, some of the photographs that Sophie showed were in that book. It's called Lonely Eagles. So that was really the beginning of the series. But you know what, I forgot to say something actually in the beginning that I was feel should be said on the eve of a Memorial Day weekend, which is that in addition to memorializing those veterans who are no longer with us, I think it behooves us to celebrate and honor the veterans who are with us, which many of them did not get when they came back from the service. And again, I'm looking for Reverend Blakely, who told me many stories about that as seeing them.
That's also a good segue into a question for Mr. Joseph Giannini, but I'm going to pass it actually to you to ask that question. But I think the gist of the question. Well, do you want to take? The gist of the question is.
I have a copy of it actually.
What happened to the Vietnam veterans when they came home?
A lot of us just, I had to finish my time at the Marine Corps, but when I mustered out, a lot of us just disappeared because we realized that we had been branded the losers that lost the war. So it affected us in different ways. I was able to go to law school and go into private practice. A lot of us committed suicide. A lot of us had post-traumatic stress disorder. We didn't even know it. A lot of us were infected by Agent Orange. We didn't know it. So it was the war without heroes. We were never called heroes. We were never called warriors. But deep down, we knew that we had done something good. I'm not talking about service to our country, because Vietnam turned out to be a lie, and some of us realized that when we were over there. But what we did is we served one another. We fought for one another. That's what it came down to. We fought for our battalion, our company, our platoon, our squad, our fire team, and the Marines standing on the left and right. And that was the most important thing that we learned. We learned it the hard way. But so many, many years later, I'm dealing with it. You could ask my wife. When I first met her, I just didn't say a word about Vietnam for maybe 10 years or maybe more. But I'm dealing with it now by writing, because I don't want people to forget us. So what I do is I write, and believe it or not, people read it. And what I do is I take the readers back in country with us, and I let them see and hear and feel and suffer just the way we did. And it works. It's working really good. Along the way, I met Nina, and she's been incredible. She's been working with me, you might say, but it was my wife, Nikki, who started me writing, because she realized that in 2002, something was going wrong with me. I was back in country, I was gone, and she said, do me a favor, 2 favors, she said. You talked about writing, get in a writing class and write, which I did. And go get some counseling, which I did. However, you got to remember, a lot of us were in denial. And when I went for counseling, and the counselor said, you have post-traumatic stress disorder, guess what? I stopped going to counseling. But then I resumed. Anyhow, and some crazy things are happening, like Marines that I haven't seen since 1968 and 67. We're reunited, and it's really something. And it's a pleasure to be here and to see that you people really appreciate us, you know, and what we did for one another. Thank you very much.
Nina's really the real star of this, so I'd like to move the general direction of this over to you, but I guess that is a pretty good segue. I can't help but point out into the idea of, I'm filching this phrase off of Joe, actually, who calls it the second service, right, that veterans do, which maybe you can describe what that means, and then, you know, that's a common theme for all the people here, so maybe we can talk about.
Well, just real quickly, second service has really been about, we're seeing it particularly a lot more now with the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. And what it is, you know, you've served your country and you've come home and you want to continue to serve in some way. And there has to be a way to figure out how to do that. And so what we're seeing within the community is groups like the Mission Continues and Team Rubicon, who were instrumental in helping with Sandy King last year. And what they're doing is they're putting veterans in to actually continue to serve, but this time serve in the community. And it does two things. It actually helps them to serve in the community and get recognized by the community as well, but it helps them to transition into the community and gives them a sense of purpose instead of coming home and trying to figure out what's next or what am I going to do. So that's really what second service and what's really honorable is that these things didn't exist during the Korean War, Vietnam, and yet these individuals in some way, shape, or form have continued their service to their community, for themselves, and that has been a sense of purpose to keep them all going and keep them instrumental with helping their fellow veterans. Because I know for me, when I got out of the service back in '95, this is before 9/11, after Vietnam, there wasn't much around. And if I didn't run into a Vietnam veteran myself who was advocating and in the community and giving a second service, I wouldn't have found out about benefits that I was entitled to or even things that I was eligible for. So this notion of second service is really important because it shows that the self-worth and the ability to give back even more to the community and to the nation.